My name is John Deedy, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and local political media analyst. Welcome to the Maryland State Politics and Government podcast on Substack. Today, I am talking with current Baltimore County State's Attorney Scott Shellenberger. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
We are about 60 days away from the primary election. How's the campaign going?
I think it's going very well. I'm staying incredibly busy, out in the community like I always am, meeting with voters, meeting with citizens, listening to them about the issues that they think need to be addressed in their particular area of the county. I'm talking about my history to make sure that they're aware of the things that I've done over the years that is important. So we're having a very good dialogue, and it's going very well.
Talked about meeting voters and going all over the county. Are there different issues in different parts of the county? Are there some things that people in Dundalk are like, here's our red number one issue, and in Pikesville it may be different, in Towson or Arbutus it may be different?
Right. Well, right now, unfortunately, a number of people, particularly in Towson, are talking about issues that young people at the malls. And it's not just Towson, but that seems to be one of the main issues is young people going to the malls and disrupting things. So that seems to be an issue in Towson. Unfortunately, in the east side, we're always having conversations about domestic violence issues. Now, that does happen everywhere in the county, and I mean everywhere, but there does seem to be a particular area of concern with regard to domestic violence issues over on the east side. But everywhere, people are concerned and care deeply about their safety. And that's what I come to talk about, is how we continue to make them safe and how we can make them safer.
Talked about the issue of domestic violence, and you mentioned the east side as far as that being a major problem in that area. What can law enforcement, such as yourself, do about that to curb that problem, if there is something you can do?
Well, we've already done it. And here are a couple things that we have. Number one, I have a domestic violence unit that has 5 full-time attorneys. That's all they do are domestic violence cases. In addition, we have 6 paralegals and a law clerk who just work on those cases. And the reason we have so many people in that unit is because, unfortunately, very often on a Friday night when someone dials 911 and says that they've been injured or hurt by their partner, they often call us on Tuesday and they say, I don't want to press charges. I want the charges dismissed. Never mind. Now, a very, very important step was taken in the area of these cases several years ago when Baltimore County Police Department, in conjunction with our office, launched the body cameras. Body cameras are absolutely crucial in the area of domestic violence cases because, number one, you get that 911 call, and there's an exception for the hearsay rule that if someone is excited and upset, then I can play that audio in court. And very often when they call 911 on a Friday night, they're very excited. And so I can play that audio in court. That carries on to when the police arrive at the scene and a person is crying, telling the officer what happened, and it's all being recorded. And if they're still upset, which they usually are, I can play that video and audio in court, even if the victim chooses not to go forward with charges. The other thing that's important is they point to where they got injured, and the officer with the body camera is recording that exact injury. And when you get in front of a judge or even maybe a jury several months later, that's the best evidence that we can provide, which helps us tremendously in domestic violence cases. And please, your viewers need to understand, this doesn't always mean that we're sending people to jail. What it does mean is it gets us in front of a judge so the judge can ask the defense lawyer, does your client have an anger problem? Does your client have a drinking problem? Does your client have a mental health issue? And we can get help to that family so that we don't see them again.
It's a critical issue, and I think that it's something that a lot of people, it still is in the area of we don't talk about that.
Well, we talk about it a lot in our office. I talk about it tremendously when I'm out in the community. And I let folks know that they shouldn't be embarrassed by what has happened. What they should do is seek the kind of help that we can provide, the courts can provide, and a lot of the other agencies can provide.
What can your office do? What can any state's attorney office do about what's been happening over the last few years at Towson Town Center? Because young people going into a thing, you can't stop them from going there, but at the same time, some of the we've recently Apple has said, "Hey, we're out of here." What can be done by your office to help curb some of the problems there?
Some of the things that we have done is in conjunction with conversations with the police department and with mall security, they have upped their security level and have more people on duty. The other thing they've done is they say if you're under the age of 18, you must be accompanied by an adult. And so we're hoping that that continues to cut down on the numbers of young people, and it allows the mall and the security staff to basically tell those who are not being accompanied by an adult and under 18 that they have to leave. The other thing is we've upped the amount of police officers we have in the general area, particularly on weekends. And these meetups happen as a result of social media, and the police very carefully watch the social media to see where the meetups may be occurring and on which days. And on those days, then we really up the ante by having more uniformed police officers in the area.
Recently, it was announced by Julian Jones that you have come out and endorsed him. Why'd you choose to endorse Julian Jones?
Well, number one, he has a fire department emergency background, which he understands what it means to go to an emergency and have to help quickly and help a family quickly so that they survive. A little different than a police officer, but a very similar type of an experience where you have to act quickly and you're trying to help the people who you're there with. Number two, he's been on the council for, I believe, about 12 years now, or at least a number of years, has a lot of experience. I worked closely with him several years ago on police reform bills that they were passing in the county council. And he had put some bills forward, and I got to meet with him and ask for some changes. And he was very cooperative in trying to get those things together. The other thing that I think is important is in 2022, when a very liberal individual, a progressive Democrat, was running against me and got a tremendous amount of money from the world's richest man to try and beat me and beat other prosecutors like me, I went to many, many people trying to get their support. And Julian Jones stood up for me and said, "This is the person we want as our state's attorney." And because of his support, I won that election and kept the county on good, solid footing with having a state's attorney's office that doesn't go after progressive ideas, but does, in fact, prosecute cases that need to be prosecuted.
I always like
And just
asking.
frankly, I think he's the best person for the job.
Okay. I always like to ask political people this question because I always find it's fascinating. Sometimes it changes in a variety of ways. Who do you consider your political North Stars, heroes, people you admire in a variety of things? People that maybe when you were younger, it was like, wow, I want to be like them, or people even today that you're like, that's how I'd like to be leading.
Well, my greatest North Star was my first boss in the state's attorney's office. At the age of 22, when I just was finishing up my first year of law school, Sandy O'Connor, the longtime county state's attorney, offered me a job as a law clerk. And I worked my way up into the office. The day after I was sworn in at the bar, I was standing in court prosecuting cases. And for the next 8 years, she continued to promote me to the point where I ended up being the head of the sex offense unit, in which I prosecuted only sexual assault cases, child abuse cases, and murder cases. And I did that for about 3.5, 4 years. So Sandy O'Connor certainly was and is still my North Star, the person I take after. When I win this election this year, and you add her years and my years, we will be at nearly 60 years of serving the people of Baltimore County. And I think that's very important. The second person who is my North Star was my next boss, and that was Peter Angelos. I met Mr. Angelos in 1987. He was my opponent in my first murder case, and we defeated him, put his client in jail for killing his wife. And 8 years later, 9 years later, he called me up and offered me a job. I went in for a discussion. I didn't have a resume. I hadn't been really looking for a job, but he remembered me from that time and offered me a job. Those two people are clearly my North Stars. The third person would then be Dana Levitz. Dana Levitz was a deputy state's attorney in the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office. I used to go down to court whenever I could to watch him try a case. He was absolutely amazing in a courtroom, and then became a judge and was one of the best judges around, and unfortunately died way too soon. But those really are three of the people that greatly influenced my life and greatly led me to where I am today.
One of the big issues in Annapolis this year was ICE and 287 agreements. What are your thoughts about what went on in Annapolis this session in relation to that type of stuff?
Well, I stayed out of that because I thought that Annapolis should come to their own conclusions about how they felt about that. I can tell you that we will obey the law, and we will do what the law says we have to do. There are occasions, however, where, say, if in a child abuse case or a domestic violence case, where other actions have to be taken, we're not going to stand in the way of anybody who's taking the legal course that they're allowed to take. But we will stand by the law that was passed in Annapolis and not seek out the help as dictated by the law.
One big issue that happened in Annapolis also this session was related to changes in juvenile justice and charging people. What are your thoughts about what they did in Annapolis? Was it good? Was it bad? Do you feel optimistic about it, or do you feel pessimistic?
Well, I'm in between. For many, many years, they were trying to start all cases, even a 16-year-old, 17-year-old murderer in the juvenile system, and then make the state's attorney's office bring them up to the adult system if a judge thought it was appropriate. For decades, our system had a way of working where if you committed a certain kind of violent crime at a certain age, you started in the adult system, and then they could try and wave back to the juvenile system. It had been that way for decades. And then for several years, they've been trying to change that. The difference this year was they didn't go as far as they had gone in years past. There was kind of a hybrid mixture of the cases that would start in adult court and the cases that would start in juvenile court. The most famous case that will really come back to all of your viewers is the case of Nick Browning. He was 15 when he killed his mother, his father, and his two brothers. That's 4 people. He killed them at the age of 15. He had planned it out. He had tried to create, a distraction as to where he had been and what he had been doing. And he was charged as an adult. Now, he did have the ability to try and get a hearing, and he did have a hearing to waive him back to juvenile court. A judge denied that. And he was tried as an adult, pled guilty, and is serving 2 life sentences. And the state of Maryland has decided he should serve those life sentences in a very secure facility out in Cumberland. I believe that case was handled properly. I believe that that's how individuals who commit those kind of crimes should be handled. And certainly when you're 16 and 17 and you carjack someone and you have a prior juvenile record, I believe you should be continued to be treated as an adult, because that's a very adult and scary crime. And so the law they passed is a hybrid of what they have been trying to do for years. I can't say I'm completely happy, but it's a better change than was proposed years ago.
When laws get changed, how long does it take for your office to see the immediate impact, whether this law or any other law that's passed in Annapolis or federally, where the impact where maybe a year down the road, 2 years down the road, yeah, this was good, or boy, they got to fix this thing?
Well, mostly the starting date for new laws is October 1st. Sometimes they have emergency laws that begin before that, but for the most part, it's October 1st of the same year. When it comes to charging, we're going to see an immediate change on day one, because, the crimes that happen after October 1st, right after that day, they will have to be treated according to the new laws. Something like body cameras, we really didn't see a change until months later, because when the body cameras went into effect and the law went into effect that allowed us to record video and audio, those cases didn't come to court for many months. One thing that your viewers will find interesting that I may have mentioned to you before is Maryland has a statute in which it's called a wiretap statute. In this day and age, when everybody sees something happen and they pull their phone out and start audio and video recording, they are violating Maryland law. We had to go, when we were launching body cameras, to the legislature to get an exception to record audio in the state of Maryland because of this wiretap statute. I have tried for 10 years to get rid of this statute because everybody breaks the law and records when they see a fight or something big happening out in the public. We had to go and change the wiretap statute so we could record audio on body cameras that we think are a great crime stopper and a great crime solver. It's just inconceivable to me that we have not changed that statute. There is actually in that statute a word called switchboard in that statute. And so that shows how old that wiretap statute is, but we have not been able to get it changed in Annapolis. Fortunately, we did get the exception for body cameras so that we can record the audio when those were launched.
Deal with a situation where something is recorded, hey, a ring camera even, where no one says, hey, you're getting permission, you're doing it for security reasons, or someone who happens to come upon a crime and they take their phone out, they record it. How do you deal with those situations when you go in the court and you say, I got this great visual evidence, but the person I'm recording didn't give me permission?
I had a horrible case many years ago, a child abuse case, in which the young girl had her play and plug and she turned it on and you could hear what was happening, and I could listen to what was terribly happening to this young girl, and I couldn't play it in a courtroom. And to this day, I can't play it. If the reason that they can record videos in stores and on ring cameras is because there's typically a sign letting them know that if they come in, they are being recorded. And so, that's where the exception comes for the ring cameras, is there's typically a sign accompanying it, warning people that they're being recorded, or sometimes it's not audio recorded. It's not against the law to just video record some of the people. You can do that all you want. It's the audio recording in the state of Maryland that's out of date.
So you can have the audio. The audio is the issue. The video is not a problem. But when the audio isn't, Sounds like
That's for,
someone's got to fix something in Annapolis.
I've tried for many, many, many years and just haven't been able to do it. In fact, I've kind of given up just because I have not been able to do it.
Last question I want to ask is it ties in maybe a little bit what we just talked about, and obviously we could take that issue away. What is the one thing you'd like to see either county council do or people do in Annapolis uh, down the road to help you out as a state's attorney to kind of make your life a little bit easier? What could be done to kind of help out at the state's attorney's office or any state's attorney's office statewide?
Well, I think state's attorneys always feel like we need more people, more bodies, both the lawyers that go to the courtroom and the people who really do a lot of the work beforehand, getting files ready. So, I keep talking about body cameras, but here's an example of something that people never thought about. You're coming out of the Safeway in Towson, and you're with your young child, and all of a sudden somebody comes up to you and they rob you of your car keys and steal your car. You've been carjacked. Well, the first thing you're going to do is dial 911. And the first thing a police officer is going to do is come to the scene and say, what has happened? And they are recording that. And when you say that I've been robbed and carjacked, the next thing the officer asks is, what's your name? What's your address? What's your phone number? What's your child's name who's standing right here? How old is he or she? And what's your cell phone? I have to turn that video over to defense counsel. I have to have the video given to a defendant who doesn't have a lawyer, and they can watch and listen to that. So one of the things nobody thought about when we were launching body cameras is I have 17 full-time staff, paralegals, who watch videos every day and shield personal information. So your viewers should know that when they call 911 and that officer comes up and says, what's your name, address, and phone number, I have full-time people shielding that. You will not be able to hear what that person is saying. If the officer is looking down at his notes and writing your name and address and phone number, we can shield it video-wise also. Their full-time job is to keep you safe. By making sure we have these body cam videos, we can play in court, but we shield all personal information to make sure that you are protected. And we do that full-time. So they work 35 hours a week, 5 days a week, constantly shielding that information. They have a requirement of doing a certain amount of minutes every week that we can check and verify that they're doing their jobs. And it's hard. They have a lot of work to do to keep up.
It does
So
sound
that's
like a lot
something
of
that a
work.
lot of people don't know about. I have 17 people, and certainly if I could have a few more of those, I would love it.
I can understand that because it can be a very difficult job what you have to
It
do as
is.
far as that.
It is. And sometimes in our district court cases, which would be, the cases that are misdemeanors, low-level crimes, sometimes we're turning that video over to defense counsel just a couple of days before the trial date. And, in the more serious cases, we have more time. But in some of the more simple cases, we have to get that video ready pretty quick.
Thank you again for your time today and good luck on the campaign trail.
Appreciate your time also. And thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome.